Welcome to a special edition of Legal AF. It's always a special edition when we have Adam Klasfeld from All Rise News joining me on news and analysis. And we both spotted this thing about Alex Jones of InfoWars begging and pleading at the United States Supreme Court. He sent in a recent missive just the other day. I've got 30 million of followers and watchers. Please bail me out of the $1.5 billion defamation and punitive damages judgment against me for lying about the Sandy Hook child and teacher massacre. And we got a ruling. No surprise here, although there's some interesting complications in the relationship between Alex Jones and number two in the Department of Justice. And I think we should talk about all of that as well. How you doing, Adam?
Doing well, Michael. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Why don't you tell the audience from the long list, what did we learn about, or what was the judgment? Let's start there. We've reported that he went bankrupt and had to sell a lot of his branding and equipment and all this other stuff. But why don't you start with, what is the judgment? How is it obtained? And what did he ask the Supreme Court to get him out from under, that we can go from there?
So there are two separate judgments obtained by the families of the Sandy Hook victims over the course of two separate defamation lawsuits that they went to trial in Texas and in Connecticut. And juries found that the damages were totaling what you said, more than 1 billion, more than 1.4 billion, close to 1.5. And that was because of an extraordinary campaign of telling his listeners that the Sandy Hook families were fake, that the victims were child actors. It was an entire campaign where he was absolutely tormenting these families. They heard from many people, including the first responding FBI agents who walked into the school, saw the horror show, which was the first mass shooting in an elementary school in U.S. history. I'm sure many of the folks who are watching right now remember how horrible it was. There was emotional testimony by that FBI agent, William Aldenberg, and discussing the family members themselves, the hell that Alex Jones put them through repeated broadcasts, claiming that they were child actors, that there weren't actually actual victims, and that the family members were part of this political plot to take away your Second Amendment rights to your guns. This was happening over a long period of time. The Sandy Hook families finally got justice with this judgment, and seeking a last-minute bailout, Alex Jones went to the Supreme Court, which slammed the door shut on him today.
He did a lot of underhanded things, even in the courtroom. He was chastised and reprimanded and sanctioned a number of times by judges when he tried to testify on his own behalf, and only made it worse. He tried to hide his assets, tried to do a shell game, hiding his assets among different entities. He tried to bankrupt out one. There were massive fights that the plaintiff's lawyers needed to win in bankruptcy court to avoid the discharge of this judgment, because believe me, he tried hard not to have to pay a dime and get off scot-free. This was the last stop, and much like the Supreme Court in its long list denials a week or so ago about Ghislaine Maxwell, we now have two buddies of Donald Trump and Trump inner circle in the MAGA world, who have now lost at the United States Supreme Court level, who are effectively saying, we may let Donald Trump get away with murder almost, but we're not going to let all the people necessarily that followed him or follow him do that. And there's been some new reporting about, we started it with, it looked like there was a wholesale rebellion between DOJ leadership, which is Todd Blanche, and the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and Ed Martin, who Pam Bondi had chosen to be the head of, first, the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. when he couldn't get that job because he's such an election denier and Jan Sixer, that he ended up getting a job as the head of the weaponization of the Department of Justice. I think it's supposed to stop weaponization, but he's actually leading it. He's also the pardon attorney. But apparently, he's calling the shots now in the Eastern District of Virginia. And it looks like Lindsay Halligan thinks her boss is named Ed Martin and not Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi. So why don't you tie some of the Alex Jones into Ed Martin into Todd Blanche war?
Absolutely. Now, the FBI agent that I spoke about earlier, who delivered the very emotional testimony, we should play it at some point. His name's William Aldenberg. And there was an extraordinary letter a couple of weeks ago where Ed Martin went out to harass this hero FBI responder who went to the scene of Sandy Hook and said, basically asked for any information that would essentially suggesting that he was testifying for some sort of financial gain. Well, apparently that was even a bridge too far for Donald Trump's former personal lawyer turned Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. And there's been reporting in multiple outlets, most recently the New York Times, about Todd Blanche pulling the plug on it. And this just ran yesterday. It's extraordinary. So I'm going to read from it. Says, Mr. Martin, given nearly free rein inside the department by President Trump to investigate perceived administration enemies, had sent a threatening letter to an ex-FBI agent who had testified years before against far-right conspiracy theorist Alex Jones for spouting lies about the 2012 Sandy Hook massacre. A ticked-off Mr. Blanche asked Mr. Martin, why pick a pointless fight that would embarrass the administration on behalf of a fringe activist? He demanded that Mr. Martin rescind the letter, according to three people briefed on a phone call between the two men. Mr. Martin, who has used his brief tenure as a federal prosecutor in Washington to purge government lawyers who charged January 6th rioters, complied. Now, how do we know this is true beyond this being a very deeply sourced report inside the New York Times? We know because they actually did rescind that letter. Ed Martin had to go and essentially do a complete 180, rescind this letter after a conversation with Todd Blanche that was also reported with ABC News. So this is someone who's even going too far for Todd Blanche, who has been bending over backwards to do everything that his former client, Donald Trump, said. In the case of this FBI agent, William Aldenberg, it's just extraordinary because this is a legitimate hero of the Sandy Hook massacre.
The fringe activist that he's referring to in that reporting is Alex Jones. The FBI agent is the one you're talking about. Just to show people how disgusting Ed Martin is, let's show a clip of that FBI agent testifying, and just to give a flavor of what he did heroically and truthfully to testify. And that's the kind of person that Ed Martin decides he's going to go and defame and reprimand in some way or attack, that now Todd Blanche has to try to remind him of which administration he works for. Let's play the clip.
I'm so sorry. So sorry. These people have to listen. They have to listen to this. But
Bill, stop.
Oh, man. Sorry.
You came through that first classroom door.
Yes, sir.
Did you then enter the second classroom?
Stepped to the first classroom, cleared it, and then we went through the classrooms are divided by like a middle door. The two classrooms were attached by a middle door. We entered into the second classroom.
That was Vicky Soto's classroom?
I learned that after, yes.
So, look, I mean, Alex Jones was trying to make it about a First Amendment issue, hoping that the Supreme Court, which does bend over backwards, the MAGA 6 on First Amendment issues, would bail him out on this. That's why he filed, I'm up to 30 million. So, which is, by the way, an extraordinary number. I mean, the Midas were up to about 5.5, but there's a lot of people that listen to him, and unfortunately, he doesn't have the money. This judgment they'll go run around and try to collect it and take everything he has. It'll be a fight to the death over the assets that he has, but the plaintiff's lawyers are up for the challenge. and it's not going to stop him. I mean, he's not going to go off the air. He's not going to go back, Alex Jones, under the rock that he slid out from under. We're going to be hearing about Alex Jones. He's a reverberation chamber for MAGA and Donald Trump. Even if they don't endorse him, in social media posts, so to speak, many people go on his show. Many people within the administration go on his show. Paul Ingrassia, who's, I don't think he's going to make it as the special counsel, head of the special counsel's office. He's been on Alex Jones's show. Bannon has been on Alex Jones's shows. A lot of people in the inner right-wing MAGA circle that still go on his show because they think there's currency to it. So what do you think is going to happen next?
Well, what I think that's going to happen next is that the Sandy Hook families are going to vigorously pursue all of Jones's assets. This is a statement from Chris Maddy, who's a lawyer for the Sandy Hook victims, after Ed Martin had to reverse himself embarrassingly after getting dressed down by Todd Blanche. Said, thanks to the courage of the Sandy Hook families, InfoWars will soon be finished. Christopher Maddy, the lawyer for the family, said, in its last gasps, Jones is once again harassing them, only with the corrupt complicity of at least one DOJ official. It's as disgusting as it is pathetic, and we will not stand for it. That was his statement to ABC. I'll just add kind of one thing. We've been talking a bit about Ed Martin being a fan of and supporter of the January 6th rioters, big defender of them. He praised one particular January 6th rioter who posed like Adolf Hitler, complete with the mustache. This is someone who posed outside of Letitia James's Brooklyn house on a hot 88-degree day in New York City in a trench coat as if he is Inspector Clouseau. So this is a real comeuppance for him.
Yeah. I mean, look, Ed Martin was a defense lawyer who defended Jan 6ers. He had been a former federal prosecutor. Somewhere along the way, he left. He jumped the tracks, let's just put it that way, and has become a danger to our democracy and a danger to the Department of Justice. And as far as I'm tracking it, he's a danger to Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, because he seems to report to no one but himself and or Donald Trump. There is no longer a organizational chart within the Department of Justice that matters. Donald Trump hires his own prosecutors like Lindsay Halligan. He assigns them to people like Ed Martin that are not in the chain of command, and he has them do their bidding. He pushes aside prosecutors that Lindsay Halligan, Pam Bondi wanted to hire. There's new reporting that Meg Cleary is no longer in the Eastern District of Virginia. She was the prosecutor for about 12 minutes, picked by Pam Bondi, until she was relegated to the number 2 job after Donald Trump picked Halligan. So we're going to be following all of this. So I think the takeaway for the audience is not only about Alex Jones, but about Ed Martin and this brewing battle of insubordination between Martin and Todd Blanche. And if I had to put my money on a winner, frankly, I think it's Todd Blanche. Because
absolutely.
Even though MAGA world is like, he had lunch with Caitlin Collins, and oh my God, as opposed to understanding how Washington works, he's built up a ton of reservoir of goodwill with Donald Trump for what he did in all the criminal convictions. And Donald Trump is genuinely loyal, especially when it comes to his criminal defense lawyers. I mean, he's John Sauer from the Trump perspective is a rock star as a solicitor general, and he's winning a lot of his cases. Had been Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer. Say what you want about Pam Bondi, but she was an impeachment lawyer for Donald Trump. Emil Bovee is now on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, having been Todd Blanche's number 2. He's not. If he had to pick between crazy Ed Martin, Eagle Ed Martin, and Todd Blanche, I think Todd Blanche wins that. 9 times out of 10, don't you?
Absolutely. And I would give another reason as well. Ed Martin has no discipline and strategy, and Todd Blanche does. You have Ed Martin just showing up outside of the home of Letitia James because he thinks it looks cool, and he's wearing a trench coat on a hot summer day. And Todd Blanche is someone who, for any kind of criticism one might have of him or his lawyering, can see, at least in this particular case, a bigger picture. Why stick out your neck and embarrass the administration for this fringe activist, Alex Jones? And days later, he's vindicated because the Supreme Court looks at this case and says it's a dud. There's nothing to review here. There's no First Amendment violation. There's nothing. Get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, regularly reporting and doing videos here on Legal AF on the Midas Touch Network. And of course, he's got his own Substack and does regular reporting and lives and amazing content, breaks stories in the courtrooms around America on All Rise News Substack. Adam, it's always great. Let's get you on a live with you and me sometime next week.
Sounds good. Great talking again, Michael.
You too. You too. Michael Popok signing off for Legal AF. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.